Holden Commodore ZB. The one I'm going to be driving is the VXR, which is the top of the range, the sort of performance version. And now I just wanted to declare an interest up front. I am a Commodore owner. I currently drive the last of the VFII SSV red lines in manual, and I'm very happy with that car. It's my third Commodore, so the Commodore badge means a lot to me, and I know it does to a lot of you as well. I've never had quite so much of an outpouring of grief and, well, frankly, hatred towards a car as I have for the ZB Commodore, based on the couple of videos that I've done already on the launch event and my first view of the vehicle. A lot of that dislike of this vehicle obviously comes from an emotional attachment to that Commodore badge, but I want to try and get past a bit of that and see how the ZB stacks up as a car. Now this top spec VXR costs $67,990 in New Zealand. It's a 3.6 litre V6 engine, normally aspirated, and it puts out 235 kilowatts. Now that's about 25 kilowatts up on the old SV6 engine, which this car shares a lot of its engine architecture with. So that's quite a useful extra 25 kilowatts, and it's clever because this engine runs east-west and features what is largely a single exhaust pipe through the body of the car, whereas the SV6 of course had a dual exhaust system all the way from the front to the back. So to get an extra 25 kilowatts out of the same displacement, yeah, that's good work, Holden. Thank you. We'll take those. Peak torque is 381 newton meters, and that's at a fairly high 5,200 RPM. Holden claim a 0 to 100k time of 6.2 seconds. So, you know, it's okay. It's quite fast. So what does it sound like and go like off the line? Doesn't have a great sound. I know they've done some work on tuning the sound to make it kind of a bit more, you know, enthusiast oriented, but it sounds to me like it's a little bit sort of thinner and higher revving than what I'm used to from an SV6, but it is putting out more power, so you can't argue with that. All V6s in the Commodore range come with all-wheel drive, and it's what's called the Twinster version of all-wheel drive technology. Now the Twinster, you might recall, is the same sort of setup that they have on the Focus RS. So instead of having a traditional diff at the back, it has two clutches, one for each axle. Those clutches can apportion torque right across that rear end of the car. So you can have pretty much 100% of the rear torque of the vehicle being delivered to one wheel, the outside rear wheel. But there's no drift mode, so don't go looking for that in your VXR. So how does it go around corners? It feels a little bit nose heavy in corners, but there's very little body roll. The car's quite taut, it's quite well tied down. I know Holden's done a lot of tuning on the car to make it work in Australasia, and I think they've done a good job. And like all other Commodores in the ZB range except for the diesel, this has a 9-speed automatic transmission. As you'd expect from every modern transmission, the auto in this thing goes about its job seamlessly. You don't really notice it at all. Even in sporty driving, I've kind of let it do its own thing, because while I can take control of gear shifts, with 9 ratios, I'm not sure that I'd make a decision that's any better than what the car's working on itself. And it does seem to respond very well to changes to your drive selection. So if you are in sport mode, or particularly in VXR mode, the car is very eager to drop down a gear, hold it much longer as the revs build, and deliver as much of a sporting drive as it can. Shifting the drive modes between normal and sport and VXR essentially puts more and more drive towards the back of the car. So in VXR mode particularly, you do feel quite a rearward bias to the all-wheel drive system, which is nice because you can get that sort of into a corner, give it some accelerator and let the back just push wide and bring the nose in to tighten the line towards the apex of the corner. So look, it's not rear wheel drive, but it does have moments of feeling rear wheel drive-ish, I guess you'd say. And of course you've got the sure-footedness of all-wheel drive in all situations. It's got Brembo brakes up front and no-name calipers out the back. The VXR here sits on 20-inch wheels, which could be quite compromising in terms of ride comfort, but it also has variable dampers in this spec too. So the car is very comfortable to drive. It's not at all thuddy and crashy over bigger potholes. Of course, as you go up through Sport and then VXR, the suspension tightens further and further. So in VXR mode, you're definitely aware that you're in the firmer of the suspension settings, but it's never unpleasant, and it certainly does give you great control and connection with the road. Accommodation in here is really quite good. It's certainly narrower than a VF Commodore is, because there's not a big transmission tunnel needed to accommodate a V8 engine, and so you're a bit closer to your passenger in the front, and certainly the rear seat you'd be really optimistic to try and get 3 adults in there. It's really a 4.5 seater, and you wouldn't get 3 car seats across the back for kids, I don't reckon either. So it is a bit smaller inside from width point of view, but leg room and headroom is pretty much the same as a VF2 Commodore, so you're not dipping out too much there. The interior design it's okay. It's kind of sleek and European and a bit minimalist, but it's also a bit drab. There's no contrasting colours. The dashboard top is kind of rubberized plastic with some faux stitching on there, and same with the tops of the door cards. There's no leather except maybe a little bit by the actual door pulls, and certainly on your seat, steering wheel and gear shift lever. It's not a particularly exciting interior. I guess you'd say it's European and it's stylish, but yeah, it's a little bit bland. It's got a number of things that are much better than my VF2 Redline SSV. For instance, these seats, they're kind of tombstone shaped and they're very comfortable. They are very comfortable. There's lots of adjustment available to you. You can extend the thigh support, you can adjust the bolster and clamping onto your torso. You've got even a massaging function, which is a little bit unnerving. I wouldn't worry about that, but they are supremely comfortable seats. These A-pillars, although they're still a little bit thick, much thinner than the VF2, so better forward visibility. Headlights. This car has great headlights. It's these LED matrix headlights. Essentially what they do, when you've got it in auto mode, wherever they can, they'll go into high beam mode. So when they detect there's not a lot of ambient light outside, not a lot of street lamps and stuff, they'll go into high beam mode, and they'll essentially stay that way even when you come up behind another vehicle or when another vehicle is coming towards you. Now in both of those situations, they'll actually track the vehicle, say, in front of you, and they'll give it a dark sort of dipped shape around that vehicle, so the guy in front of you is not getting dazzled by your headlights in his rear vision mirror. He thinks you're on dipped beam, but in fact you're on high beam either side of him. And similarly, when a vehicle is coming towards you, you've got yourself on high beam on your side of the road, but it'll track a low beam sort of shadow across the center line towards that vehicle and actually move that shadow as that vehicle approaches you and passes you, and then go back to full beam across the entire width of the headlight beam. Look, that's really clever. These technologies are with us now. The other one that this car has is lane keep assist. Now it's not just a lane keep warning which chirps and chimes if you start to veer outside of a marked lane. This will actually grab the steering wheel and give it some torque through the electric steering system. So I again experimented with that the other day too, driving down the motorway. I took my hands off the steering wheel on a relatively gentle series of curves, and the car did steer itself within those lanes, so it was essentially hands off. I'm not recommending you use this as a hands-free steering option, by the way. I'm not recommending that at all. The other great thing it has is a 360-degree camera, so you've got this great composite image that lets me position myself exactly equitably between the two cars on either side. I love 360-degree cameras. Thank you, Holden, for giving us one on this car. Other things better than the VF, well, it has automatic emergency braking. There you go. So it will actually put the brakes on for you as opposed to just alerting you that there's a vehicle stopped in front. Adaptive cruise control. What else? A front view camera. That's very nice. In my time with the VXR, I've come across a couple of people who've walked up to me and asked, is this a new Commodore? And I've said yes, and then straight away they kind of wrinkle their nose and go, oh, it's pretty small, isn't it? The car's not big enough in their eyes to be a Commodore. That's harsh, because it is actually a pretty good car. It drives well. It's got a really sophisticated all-wheel drive system that will actually suit the enthusiast driver quite nicely, thank you. It's got a great 9-speed automatic transmission. It's got more power coming out of the V6 engine than the SV6 of old had. It's got nice design. You know, it's kind of a bit boring, but it's certainly kind of clean and stylish and modern. Handles well, it brakes well. Got good utility with a hatchback and seats that fold down. Those great headlights, the 360-degree camera, the massaging seats. In many respects, it's the best Commodore ever made. But in other respects, it's the least Commodore ever made, because it doesn't live up to what people expect that badge to bring to the party. Large sedan or wagon, rear-wheel drive, Australian built, and maybe having a V8 engine option. Now when you take all those things away, like they have done with this car, it's a perfect storm. If they just kept with, say, the insignia name badge or some other badge that didn't come with all this baggage and affection and goodwill bundled up with it, I think this car would have had a far easier time of getting into the market and elbowing its way amongst all its competitive offerings and saying, hey, I'm a fresh new player in town. I guess I'd sum it up by saying, right car, wrong badge. I'm just about to take this car back, and I remembered a viewer of mine wanted to know if you could actually put your arm out the driver's door window without fouling the little lock here. So I'm going to, for Paul, this is just for you. There's the window down, and you can get your arm out okay. It does work as a Commodore with your arm out the window.